Holy City Center Radio, it is episode 82, and I am your host, Christian Sanger. Today is Wednesday, February 8th, 2023. We're adding up these episodes real quick now that we're doing multiple ones a week. 82, that was my jersey number in high school football. Yes, that's right. I played high school football. I know you all can probably tell by looking at my amazing physique and muscles. Believe it or not, despite what I just saying was not true, I did play high school football, 82, so it's a special number to me. Hopefully it'll be a good show. I don't know about the rest of you, but 99 Red Balloons is still very much stuck in my mind after someone mentioned it on Saturday because of the Chinese surveillance balloon. So it's been stuck in my head, and it still is, despite the fact it is now Wednesday. The balloon was shot down Saturday, and I don't see it ending at any time. And I apologize in advance to anyone who now has that little earworm stuck in their brain. Let's move on from that. We have a couple big events coming up. Of course, the Super Bowl is this Sunday. We got the Philadelphia Eagles taking on the Kansas City Chiefs. And whether you're into the game or not, some people, they're ready for the food. They're ready for the commercials. For other people, it's just gathering with friends. For whatever reason, you might be watching the game. There's lots of options for takeout, pickup, delivery, things of that nature from a lot of local restaurants. Of course, plenty of them are going to be open during the game as well. But for those of you maybe hosting at home or need to bring something to a party you're going to, I started a list of different discounts, deals, and catering options that companies and restaurants around town are offering. So you can go to holycitycenter.com and look for that. If you don't see it on the main page, you can just, there's a little search option over on the right. Just type in Super Bowl and you should see the list. And again, lots of different things, whether you want ribs or, barbecue or wings or pizza, all sorts of different deals and fun stuff going on. Keeping that same idea in mind, Valentine's Day is coming up. I have also started a list of restaurants in town that'll be having, some kind of offer, not just open. A lot of restaurants are going to be open, of course, but restaurants that'll be open with some kind of deal. Maybe they're going to have a multi-course menu, or they're going to have a band perform, or something that different than normal service. There's also some other fun things on that list if you're looking for gifts for people. I've listed some companies like Ohm Radio in town who's offering singing telegrams. So things like that, whether it's restaurants or, kind of off the, not off the wall, but a little different ideas like the telegram, something you might not think of as a gift or something to do on Valentine's Day. That list is also on the website. So holycitycenter.com, you can search for Valentine's if you don't see it on that main page when you first log in. All sorts of fun stuff going on, but time is running out on both to make reservations, to order food and stuff like that. That's why I wanted to mention it now. So be sure to go check those out before it's too late. All right, enough self-promotion. Let's move on to the latest news. And we're going to start off with something fun, which you just got to love. And that is that 3 years after winning their first Grammy Award, Charleston band Ranky Tanky on Sunday won their second. This time they won it for Best Regional Roots Music Album for their effort called Live at the 2022 New Orleans Jazz and Heritage Festival. That record came out on December 14th of last year. Congratulations to them. I mean, just amazing. It was so cool that they won a Grammy, and they're a local band. But then, 3 years later, they're winning their second. Just incredible. And they are awesome. I've seen them a couple times. One like full set, I think, at a music festival. I think it was the High Water Festival a few years back. And then they it was like an event where they didn't have like a full set. They played a few songs. But anyway, they were fantastic both times. And you will have a chance to see them here in Charleston shortly, which I'll tell you about here in just a moment. But first, a little bit more about the band. It was started by College of Charleston alumnus Clay Ross. And then from there, it branched out. Ross is on vocals and guitar. He then brought in Quentin Baxter on drums, Kevin Hamilton on bass, Charlton Singleton on trumpet and vocals, and Kiana Parler on vocals as well. Ross, Baxter, and Hamilton all majored in music at the College of Charleston and are South Carolina natives, as is Singleton, actually. So very much a local band, not just that they are here in Charleston currently performing, but these are folks that have been here, lived here for a while, went to college here, or natives of the state, if not Charleston specifically. The band, for those who don't know, they take on a modern approach to the traditional sounds of gullah music. So trying to keep that alive, through this, modernized version of some of these songs. And in fact, Ranky Tanky is a gullah phrase that basically means get funky, according to the band. So a lot of ties into that culture, which is pretty great. So not only have they won the Grammys, they were also a featured artist at President Joe Biden's inauguration event called We the People. They were also the subjects of a 10-page profile in Oxford America's South Carolina Music issue. And they were named 2020 Artist of the Year by the Charleston City Paper. That's not to mention they've been featured in all sorts of publications, news programs, and just all over, definitely making quite the name for themselves. So, if you haven't seen them live yet, you can do so at the Charleston Music Hall on Friday, June 2nd. The show will start at 8 p.m. Tickets are still available, but I don't know how much longer that'll be. Now that news is getting around that they've won their second Grammy Awards, so you might want to check that out as soon as you can. Regardless, you can stream their music, including this most recent Grammy winner, on most streaming platforms, whether it's Spotify, Apple Music, etc. So, go give them a listen. They're pretty awesome. All right, back to the Murdaugh murder trial. Some updates since the last podcast. Libby Murdaugh's caretaker saw Alex on the night of the murders, and she testified. So Libby Murdaugh was Alex's mother, who was needing some round the clock care pretty much at the time of the murder. She wasn't doing so well. That caregiver could place Alec at this house, not where the murders happened. But the really interesting thing was the timeline that is starting to emerge. So let's get into this. So this caregiver, who is the only person, by the way, to see Alec the night his wife and son were murdered, testified on Monday that a day after the killings, Alec told her that he was at his mother's house longer than she remembered that he actually was. So Shelley Smith testified, and at times she seemed kind of reluctant or unsure. I don't want to say unsure, like unsure of what if she was saying was true, but almost just like I wish I didn't have to say these things. I almost like hesitant. The ABC News 4 team has a podcast, and they are actually there at the court. And they said Ann Emerson, who's one of the co-hosts and a reporter at ABC, said it looked like she maybe was even a little intimidated. Apparently, Alec was just kind of staring at her and just very intently watching her the entire time. So that's what they said on that podcast. I'm not there at the courthouse, so I don't know, but it would explain why she was being a little reluctant, and just seemed like maybe things were a little off. But in any event, um, during her testimony, which definitely was a setback for the defense, so Smith, who again was the caregiver for Alec's mother, testified on Monday that Alec unexpectedly showed up at the house on the evening of June 7th, 2021, while Smith was sitting and watching a game show with Alec's mother. Alec's mother, by the way, has Alzheimer's. So he shows up on the night of the murder. Obviously, Smith doesn't know this at that time, but now through the timeline and testimony, we're learning this. Smith then says that Alex sat with them for about 20 minutes and then left. So about 20 minutes is what she said. Several days later, after Maggie and Paul were shot to death, and the news had gotten out about that. But this, in addition, this was also after Murdaugh's father, Randolph, had passed. So yeah, this was shortly after Maggie and Paul were shot and killed. His father died of natural causes. So that's a whole other, thing that this entire family was having to go through. So in any event, after this, Alex shows up and, starts to approach her at his parents' house. She said that Alec kind of was talking about the murders in a sense, what was going on that night. And he mentioned how he was at his mother's house for 30 or 40 minutes. Well, prosecutors are trying this, like, they're hoping this shows the jury that Alec was maybe indirectly trying to urge the caretaker to maybe, like, yeah, back up my alibi, oh yeah, by saying, oh yeah, I was at my mother's for 30 or 40 minutes that night, remember, or however he worded it to her. uh you know could that be what happened? He's trying to have someone confirm his timeline, which would, disrupt what the defense is trying to say, which is that he wasn't around at the time of the murders. So with her testifying that it was actually about 20 minutes he was there, just it makes it interesting. Is that what happened there? Is just him just talking? Again, just like the jury, we all might come to different conclusions on how important that is, but certainly worth talking about. Just also of note, Smith testified that Alec was kind of fidgety when he was speaking with his mother on the night of the murders. She also testified that he was wearing shorts and a white T-shirt at his mother's home the night of the murders, and that is the same clothes he was wearing when he was seen speaking with police later that night. He was also wearing what she said were like cloth Sperry type shoes. But those clothes, the ones that she confirmed he was wearing, and what he was seen in body camera footage and everything of that night, those clothes are different than the ones seen on the Snapchat video that was shot by Paul earlier that day. He was at that time wearing a light blue short sleeve button down shirt and khaki pants. So this goes back to the Snapchat video, which was one of the things that puts Alec at the scene close to when investigators think that Paul and Maggie were shot. Now the whole, hey, when we showed up, he had these very clean clothes on. It seemed kind of weird because he said he touched the bodies and there's no blood or anything. So it's kind of going back to that. Whatever clothes he was wearing in the video, which was shortly before the murders occurred. Well, after the murders occurred, he shows up at his mother's place, his parents' house, to speak to his caregiver. He's got on different clothes at that point in time. And then those are the same clothes he's seen when he comes back. So that's what they're playing into there. Definitely interesting to think about. We'll see as this goes on, if some of these testimonies can be confirmed somehow with cell phone records or whatever it may be. And also, as I mentioned in the last episode, uh, prosecutors got the okay to introduce a series of witnesses who will testify about Murdaugh's, bad finances, to say the least. Which includes he's allegedly stole money from some of his clients, his own law firm, and his friends. So there's going to be testimony allowed about that. Again, normally testimony about other potential crimes are not allowed, but if they could tie to motive, it's allowed. So that's why that's happening. So today, when I was watching and getting updates, it was a lot of that. It was a lot of people he worked with, friends, just testifying about you know any wrongdoing they're aware of or what they found out since the investigation started, and it was a lot of that. So no big revelations. They're just trying to hammer home the point how bad his finances were and how much trouble he knew he was getting into. But as far as other details regarding the murder and things like that, nothing at the time of the recording was jumping out. It was just a lot of the background on the bad finances. So I don't think we're missing too much. But as always, we'll update you at the next podcast, which is due out on Friday. We got an update on a couple of stories we've talked about previously. A federal appeals court has denied South Carolina Republicans' motion for a stay in the ongoing challenge over the state's congressional district map, specifically District 1, which is currently held by Representative Nancy Mace. Leading GOP lawmakers are now going to try to take the case to the U.S. Supreme Court in an attempt to avoid having to redraw the map that a 3-judge federal panel just last month deemed unconstitutional, as it was discriminatory and it was a racial gerrymander. The judges ruled in early January that the boundaries passed last year by the Republican-dominated state legislature marked an intentional splitting of black voters in South Carolina's 1st District, which runs from Charleston to Hilton Head Island. So that then the February 4th order postponed the date by which new maps may be presented. So if the Supreme Court takes the case and affirms that the federal panel's ruling was correct, the state's 1st District will have to be redrawn, but not until 30 days after the High Court's final decision. The panel had previously ordered lawmakers to submit new maps by the end of March, so now it's all dependent on when this final decision comes down. I'll be sure to keep you updated. Speaking of Republicans, in this state specifically, their quest to resume executions in South Carolina overcame another hurdle on Thursday of last week. The state Senate Corrections and Penology Committee approved a bill that would shield the identities of the companies that dispense the drug cocktail used to execute people on death row. The full Senate must now take up the latest effort in the state's search for a method of capital punishment. So, as I've talked about before, South Carolina has a law. Anyone on death row has to choose their method of death, and it was between lethal injection or the electric chair. But several years ago, the state's supply of drugs that are needed for lethal injection ran out, and now that anyone on death row didn't have a choice, no executions could be done. It's been hard for South Carolina to purchase these drugs because a lot of the companies don't want their company name to get out there to be associated with killing people. And other states have run into this issue as well. So, because they were having problems getting those drugs, they updated not the law, but they updated their method of possible executions and added a firing squad. So that way now there is a choice again. Needless to say, that has been challenged. So while that's being challenged in the courts, this is another effort by South Carolina to try to resume executions. They're hoping by shielding the drug company names, they'll start selling these drugs back to the state. So once again, South Carolina just really wants to kill people so badly. They are doing everything in their power legislatively to be able to kill people. Moving on. A coalition of Democrats is launching a statewide campaign to retool and replace the leadership of South Carolina's Democratic Party. They were saying the party cannot afford another brutal election cycle like 2022 again, and it was brutal for Democrats. The effort was announced on February 4th, means that the top 4 leadership positions will be challenged at the state convention later this year. So Brandon Upson is kind of one of the people spearheading this. He's currently resides in York County and is the chairman of the party's Black Caucus. Now wants the top job of Democratic Party chair here in South Carolina. That means he'll be challenging the incumbent Trav Robertson, who, by the way, hasn't officially announced that he was going to be running again, but I don't think there's any indication that he wasn't planning on it. So officially, he hasn't said he's running again, but he likely will be facing Brandon Upson. So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out. Joining Upson in this effort is Mary Green, who in 2018 ran for Congress in one of the state's most conservative upstate districts. Melina Rodelo, longtime Democrat and first generation American, and Erica Sampson, who currently serves as a chair of the Low Country Young Democrats and is a previous diversity and inclusion director for the Charleston County Democratic Party. So, a nice diverse mix there of folks that are going to be challenging the current leadership at this year's state convention. That'll definitely be interesting to see if the old guard hangs on or if this kind of younger, more diverse movement makes headways. So, we'll be sure to keep an eye on that as well. And finally, today, a restaurant has opened in Charleston. We talked about a restaurant closing on the last episode. I much prefer this kind of news. Charleston based restaurant Banh has opened the doors of its 3rd location that officially happened on Tuesday. The new restaurant can be found at 1100 Oakland Market Road over in Mount Pleasant. This location is going to feature the same kind of menu items that if you've been to the other locations here in the area, you'll it's all those same kind of menu items. So banh mi, salads, tacos, bowls, and then also a mix of small and large plates. This is considered kind of like a fast casual approach. So, it's not really like a sit down, have to wait a long time. It's great for lunch, especially. And like all of their other locations, they're going to have dine in, takeout, delivery, and catering. So yes, again, the 3rd location is now open. So be sure to go and visit. That'll do it for episode 82. Thank you so much for listening. Be sure to like and subscribe to this podcast, and also leave a review if you can on whatever streaming platform you are on. All of those things help me out greatly. And also by subscribing, you won't miss any episodes, as we're coming out rapid fire now 3 times a week. You got to make sure you're staying up to date on what's going on. So please do subscribe. I want to thank Lindsay Marie Collins of LMC Sound System for producing this episode, and Tyler Boone, whose music you're hearing right now. Be sure to go listen to him on Spotify. Each and every episode features his music. And another retroactive thank you to Lindsay for perfectly timing that edit that I set up there. I'm sure it was magnificent. I hope you all have a great rest of your week. I look forward to speaking to you on Friday. Weekend is almost here. Until then, good night and good luck.